Hey, welcome. It's the Spirit Identity series from the Kingdom Mentor podcast. I'm Teresa Croft, your host, and I'm so glad you're listening because we have a real treat. This is the Identity series. If you're not familiar with that, with the Kingdom Mentor podcast, it's the time where we focus on those who are finding their voice in the marketplace, in ministry, maybe even as a mom. And we love to bring them on and listen to their wisdom. So my guest is Sarah, Voris, and she's a pastor's wife. But Sarah has struggled with her identity outside of that label and was able to truly step into her own when she saw the value she brought. Did you see that value that she brought on her own because of who God made her to be and her skills and her own unique voice? Sarah now is an influencer. She teaches women how to find their own voice in their writing for their online business and how to use sales that convert for higher sales. So let's say hello, and will you help me welcome Sarah Voris. Hey, Sarah.
Hi, Teresa. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's so awesome. This is, one of those awesome Instagram connections.
Absolutely.
I love Instagram. I think God thought of Instagram.
For sure. It's that whole, what Satan intended for evil, God is going to use for good. We doesn't need the bad reputation.
And I got to tell you, I want you to tell me first just about your family, because I absolutely love your kids, even your dog. Tell us, you're a wife, and tell us a little bit about your family.
Yes. I have been married for almost 15 years to my husband. We met in college at church, actually. And he has been in ministry of all sorts straight out of high school. And so we've just been involved forever. And so he's done kids, students, adults, all over the place. So that's just been an exciting roller coaster of craziness. We've got 3 kids, 11, 8, and almost 7.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, they're a fun bunch, 2 boys and a girl, and they are different in every possible way you could imagine from all 3. We think, how are these 3 children from the same 2 parents? How are they even related?
That's so good.
Yeah.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of your story, it started kind of like writing about your kids. Is that right?
Yeah. I've started probably 3 different blogs over the years, and kind of documenting the funny things my kids would say. And a little bit like, it was an outlet for me to kind of get out into the world a little bit, because you kind of get into your stay-at-home mom bubble. And I got a lot of feedback from it that oh, your stories are so funny, your kids are so hilarious. And I just really took that, I didn't take that as anything positive about myself and what I was doing in writing. I just figured my kids are pretty funny. And it wasn't until I saw other people sharing stories about their kids that I kept thinking you could have shared that funnier, and not in a judgmental, oh, you're terrible at this, but in a way I'm that could be written funnier.
Wow.
And so as I started sharing that and realizing oh, maybe there is something to actually how I'm sharing, and that it wasn't just about kids' stories, that people were connecting to me as a person, and then kind of throwing in some encouragement in their faith and, their relationship with Jesus, and kind of where I was and things I was struggling with, and people just appreciated authenticity. We think of all the perfect pictures we see online. And more often than not, it's the things that people are oh my gosh, me too. Good. That is my life.
I love authenticity. Is of the 3 brand words. I'm let me always be authentic. Now, let me say, we have something in common.
Tell me.
We are MLM dropouts.
Yes.
When I retired from radio, I retired from radio in 2006. And I spent a whole year on the phone where I'd rather be with, on my computer. And in my off hours, I'd play around with the computer. Even though I went to the computer learning marketing, I must have signed up. I'm embarrassed to say this, but I must have signed up for 8 different ones. Mm-hmm. So tell us that journey. Wait, let me say, time out. No knock on MLM, multi-level marketing. Please.
Oh, for sure.
Some can do it, and the 2% that can do it, God bless you, and the rest of us.
Yes. And I mean, I've got really good friends who are all the way at the top of the top, and they are doing it for the kingdom. They are their word is not just buy my stuff, as we've seen with some people, but they are, here's how God can use this to transform your life. here's the good things that we are able to do because of this, and like organizations they're able to feed into and families they're able to help. Like there's definitely a right way to do it.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. And I love seeing people step into their own and like just owning it.
Yeah.
And
they finally, MLM has finally figured that this is dead, and they've got, I mean, since I've been in, I know they understand the online value now. So that's good.
Yeah. So my very first one that I signed up for, I was pregnant with my first baby and we were about to move cross country, and we were kind of pretty much broke. And so I was like, why not? Sure, this will be good. And I do love connecting with people. So I just figured, well, people are awesome. And so why not? Like, of course, everyone's going to want to buy my things. Well, it turns out they don't. And if you don't, there's just something about it that it didn't click with me. But I kind of blamed the product, or we had moved away from the organization, the people that I had signed up with. And so from there, I kind of just kept thinking like, I'm going to find it. I'm going to find it. I'm going to find it. And I think it's been 5 different companies that I went through. Yeah. And I mean, that's been in probably 12 years in 5, and probably the last 4 within the last 5 years.
Wow. So how did you tell me the story of how it kind of came from your blogs? You had 3 blogs, but how did you like come into your voice, into understanding, hey, I love, maybe, I don't know, my husband loves numbers. I love words. I'm a wordy nerd. But how did you come into this? I mean, you're a very accomplished copywriter. I mean, let me tell you how accomplished she is, guys. I have this thing that you fill out. Then Sarah was writing it and I was reading it, and I'm like, that sounds like what I would say. I thought I was reading. No, wait, that was from Sarah. That's how good of a copywriter she is. So tell us your story.
So I always laugh because I always think of like, if I had to plan out God's perfect story for me, because that's how it works. I would always assume that the people God's going to use are other people who are believers, who have this kingdom mindset, or who people are following Jesus and living that out. And really and truly, the biggest change and flip for me to be able to see that I would be able to do this with someone who has no relationship with Jesus, has no interest in it whatsoever. And I had applied for a position because we were just talking before we came on about my fear bubble. I love to live in my fear bubble. And so I was looking for jobs. I was looking for things that didn't rely on actually me having a skill of my own, but it was more like checklists, like, hey, do these 5 things for me every week and here's your dollars. But I wanted to be able to do that from home. And so I was looking for positions like that. And I had, I was like, oh, I'll just become a virtual assistant. Like people will tell me what to do. I'll do it because I know that I can, have a strong work ethic. I'll just be all over it. So I was looking for different virtual assistant positions, and I had posted in one of a business group and said like, hey, I'm interested in becoming a virtual assistant. I don't actually know how to get started or how you find people. I don't want to build an empire, because that's what I kept seeing, like, build your virtual assistant agency. I'm like, I don't want that. We knew like a specific money goals that we had. I'm like, this is X dollars amount of money that I need to make a month. And that's it. I don't want any like extra shenanigans. That it seemed very MLM, get the people in, which again is fine, but that's not what I wanted. Right. So a lady had responded and she said, hey, instead of a contractor virtual assistant position, would you be interested in looking at this, employee position that I have? Still totally virtual. And I was like, sure, let's look at it. So I started looking at it, and she was actually in an MLM as well, but had kind of pivoted her business to help other online businesses as well. She had me fill out just a regular application. And as I was doing it, I was like, I'm not qualified for this in any way, like, not at all. Okay. And I remember there's like the check sheet of all the things that like, here's what would be great if you knew these systems or these processes, like which check all that apply that you know about. There was like 15 things. And it was like, I checked 2 or 3 of them. And it wasn't even like specific things. It was like, do you know how to use Google? check. It wasn't anything, I basically would like, I type 45 words per minute, and it would have been just as useful.
Yeah.
So I had figured there was no way. And she had me write a couple sample emails for her that would be out like an email distribution list. And I think some social media captions, and that wasn't anything I'd ever done, except, stuff for my own, like blogs. And she wrote me back and said, well, I filled the position that you applied for. Just like, shocker, because there's no way I should have been doing that. But can I make a position for you? Would you come be my copywriter? And I was like, well, first of all, what is a copywriter?
Yeah.
You have to tell me what that is.
Awesome.
And so I was able to kind of come under her and learn the processes, why what I was doing worked. Like I knew these things, they just kind of came out of me, but I just didn't know why those things were what people were looking for.
Wow.
And so it was just this weird orchestration by God that led me to that spot where I was able to learn, but still be able to kind of hone my skills.
So good.
And develop that way. Yeah.
Boy, God just like put you there to learn.
Oh my gosh.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I like what you said. I tried where I didn't resonate necessarily with them, but when you get to that place where you may not resonate, but the way they talk, then you can talk for them. That's a really cool thing. I haven't done a lot of that. The first person I did it for was the Bible translation. That was easy, but I have a client now that I write for, and he's real low on words. And so it's like, okay, lean in. Well, how would he say this?
Yes.
And it's really kind of fun. Then I find out from his wife that he's really enjoying it because he's thinking he's posting these. So anyway.
Yeah.
You said, I will talk more about copywriting, but I want to touch on this because it's something that I think, someone's like, wow, that's cool. I would love to do that. Or I'm Morty. I'd love to be a copywriter, or I'd love to write better copy for my blog, or I don't know. Just let me ask you real quick. Does it work to understand copywriting when you write a book?
Oh yeah.
You're using your voice.
Yeah.
So you touch on something that is so my passion. And you mentioned in one of your podcasts that women first just need to show up. I always say perfect action is better than no action. Explain how you would encourage someone. Maybe it's copywriting, maybe it's being a coach, maybe it's a myriad of things. How would you encourage them in showing up?
Well, first you have to know that it's going to look ugly. Like it's just when you first show up. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Imperfect is a nicer way to say it. It's going to be one of those things that it's going to feel awkward. You probably aren't going to know what you're doing when you first show up. And I kind of think it kind of depends on what avenue you're looking for in your business, where you want your main stream of content to be. I think there's like your business, you mentioned coaching. So I think you can show up online and doing your business as well. And so when you are showing up on social media, that's regularly consistent posts.
Right.
If you're choosing to go live, which I highly recommend you do, if whatever that avenue is, just do it. And whatever, hone in on what your messaging is, because there's going to be a part where you're going to end up rambling. That's just, especially those who in life are talkers. You'll see the two ends of the spectrum. People show up and then it all comes out. Yes. So those are usually the people that if you met them in person, they'd be able to carry on a conversation about napkins. Like it doesn't matter what it is. And then there's the other end of the spectrum that are people that, like you said, with your client that have less words, that if they haven't honed in on that skill, their planned 15-minute live video, they're going to get it all out in 30 seconds. And then you're like, oh no. Here I am.
And there's got to be hope for introverts, because believe it or not, I'm an introvert.
Me too.
I get energy by quiet, where my husband gets energy from other people. So you can be an introvert. Can I add this? Because I'm so passionate about showing up. You can be an introvert and still show up. Now, you think, you got to be kidding. I will not show up on a live video. It's just one of those things that the more you do it, the more you're comfortable with it. And you correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, but I think I found my voice first by literally doing what you said. I mean, from 2000, I was looking this weekend over some really old videos. I thought they were great Halloween videos because they were so terrible or they were so weird. So I was finding some from 2011. And I'm like, I just showed up, but it was terrible.
Yeah.
Oh, look at my hair. Dear goodness. So don't you think showing up sometimes on video is a way to find that voice, even to find it, to write it?
Oh yeah. And that's actually one of the ways that I tell people when they are going to sit down and write things, if they just feel like that disconnect between who they are and then when they sit down and write and they're like, that's not anything I would say. What is, like, why am I all of a sudden turning like British or so, like something, we get this like this weird alter ego. One of the things that I coach people on is to say it out loud. And if you're sitting down and writing an email, literally say the words out loud as you're typing them, because you catch yourself like, no, I wouldn't say dearest regards. Like that's not me. But
that's
somehow,
a great reminder, by the way. That's gold right there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that there's something like our brain just shuts off if we're not hearing it and we're just typing it. It's just like, la, 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 here I go. But when you say it out loud, that's when you can catch yourself and you're like, I would never say that to another human ever. So yeah, that's one of the things I coach people on, is that if you're feeling stuck in that disconnect, say it out loud. While you're writing, after you write it, it's all out loud. It's a great processing tool.
And it's such a processing tool to connect with people, whether it's a text, a DM, or tell us a story where you met one of your teachers, the teachers of one of your children, and you guys hit it off like peanut butter and jelly. And then what happened?
Yes. So we went to a meet the teacher night, and I immediately, like, you just click, you just, when you find somebody that you're like, oh my gosh, we're going to be friends. This is awesome. And as an introvert, I don't generally look for that. I'm like, I have my little circle, and these are the people that I want to stay connected with.
Totally understand.
Yes. So I wasn't looking for it. But when you find that person and you think, oh, this can happen, like we can be friends. And so we were joking. I have a very dry sense of humor. And so we were joking. It was great. And then I got home and got this email from her that I'm not joking. It was the most formal thing, like dearest regards. I joked about that, but I'm pretty sure it said something like that. That was like, dear Mrs. Zavoris, thank you so much for your time. Which I'm not even going to be able to paint the picture of exactly how formal it was. But it was very much not who I spoke to. And the connection that we had was completely lost because it said, just the things that, again, people don't say in real life, that I greatly appreciate the experience that we had together. Like, that's just not what people say. And that, like, we're talking about educational goals. And I say this, as I always tell this story, I would have been equally as put off if I jumped on and she was like too far casual. She's a teacher. I understand she has to have this level of professionalism. Yeah. So if she had started like swearing at me in the email, that probably would have been equally as putting off or off-putting. But it was just this weird, like, okay, so who do I actually get? Like, what's that? Where does it come together? And so that's what I always think of, like, as a disconnect. And people are going to be able to, when all they get is your words written, they don't get that personality. If you don't bring that into it, all they're getting is like your college education and the way that your professors taught you to write, which has a time and a place for it. I would never tell you to write your college dissertation and write the way that I do. But if you don't bring your personality into writing, your readers, your customers or clients, they're never going to be able to see it.
Wow, that's so good. That's a great story too. She probably threw in one of her form letters in there, forgetting that. Whoa. So let me think. Some of this I'm asking for my own help. If you're listening, this is really cool. This is really exciting. Well, I'm going to ask you this question because this is the identity series. Mm-hmm. Tell me how knowing your true identity in Christ has helped in your life. Now, you obviously are in business, but how has your identity, knowing really, really who you are, pushed you to the next level, you feel, in your business?
Yeah. A big point of transformation was when I went from MLMs into what I'm doing now. Because before I was serving people, which is great. But I was all about what everybody else is going to want, need, think of me, how they might talk about me. And even still a little bit now, this is going to make me sound like the dumbest human alive, but that's okay. Learn from my lessons.
Join me. It's okay.
I haven't been to high school in almost 20 years.
Right.
So why would there be a thought in my mind like, what is the mean girl from high school going to think about me when I do this, when I post this?
Fear of man.
Oh my gosh. But those are people I don't see. Most of the people that were, quote unquote mean girls, I'm actually probably friends with on Instagram. And they're so nice. Like no one has ever been like, you're so stupid for what you think you're going to accomplish. But that's the tape that I put in my head, that I play. And so when I shifted from thinking about what everybody else was going to think about me and what was actually true, like who I was in Christ, who he made me to be, what gifts and talents I was given because of him, that's when everything blew up. That's when I was able to be successful because I was less concerned about what everybody else was talking about, which newsflash, they weren't talking. Like nobody's like, they don't care. Mean girls don't care. Your old boyfriends don't care. But in my head, I played this tape. And so when I was finally able to remind myself of what the Lord says about me, total game changer.
And, you can transfer what you're saying onto online. If someone gives you a nasty response, we're like, oh, great. They're obviously not my target market, if I could use that phrase. Okay, they don't like me, or they had something. I do believe in regards to that is stay in your own lane. Yeah. I went a little political on my Facebook, and, my college roommate from decades ago shows up, and you're like, okay, listen, that's not really your lane. And I really do try. And I think that's a good thing. As you stay in your own lane, you're actually staying in the lane that God put in your very DNA.
Sure.
That you speak. Hey, check this out. I think you'll like this. A friend of mine, Grace Morrison, she's a vocal coach. She's helped with my voice. She said, check this out. Think about this. Your DNA actually is a song that could be played. Isn't that interesting? So since I've learned that, I thought, okay, your DNA is lined up in your voice. What is your voice? Your voice is your identity, really. And so I'm so passionate to see people like you just really understand, okay, this is my identity. I'm going to push away fear of man, and I'm going to go forward and learn and show up and do what I can with the dog barking and the kids all over I mean, can I ask you that? So you are showing up, you are playing that song in your DNA that has everything to do with excellent copy, serving, really, you serve. How do you do that? And then I failed in this. How do you do that and still be a wife and still be a mom and still take care of your dog? I mean, that's tough.
One up, and I'm gonna have to get up and let my dog out as I'm saying this. Hi. So I'm actually going to take my computer and walk as we do this. One of the greatest joys for me is being able to show up and let my kids see me doing what I'm doing, to remind them that being a mom is amazing. And I was a stay-at-home mom for years and years and years. And I loved it. And it wasn't, I didn't start doing things because I felt like I needed something more, or like there was a higher calling, if that's the correct term. But I started doing things on my own or as a business because I felt like that's what the Lord was laying on my heart. Not because I felt like what I was doing wasn't enough. So having my kids be able to watch me do that and watch me succeed has been some of the coolest experiences for me. I love when they know all the things that are in my business. They ask me the questions like, oh, did you have this interview? Or did you, like, how did your sales page that you were writing, how did it go? The new client interview that I was doing, whatever. They ask the questions. They know they want to see me succeed. They're some of my biggest cheerleaders. And so I think getting them involved in it definitely helps take away what moms, we tend to, bring on that mom guilt and think, well, I'm not doing enough. Am I replacing my time with them because where's that motivation? Is it selfish? Am I only wanting to do this for me? but reminding myself that them seeing me do what I'm doing, whether I'm good at it or not, they could see me fail, and that's just as equally valuable for them to see me get back up and continue to move forward.
So good.
So I think there's always a time balance, and I always say work-life balance doesn't exist. It's just a work-life harmony, because it has to mean balance means it's equal on both sides, and it will never be. It will never be equal. There's going to be seasons where one is higher than the other, and that's okay.
That's so good.
And so for me to be able to feel good about my business just means that everyone's involved, everyone knows why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, and they're able to see me win or see me fail and see those lessons that I'm able to do to keep moving my business forward.
So good. That's so good. I think I did that, but I think where I failed is those times when I'm on the computer and my daughter's trying to say something and she's like, Mom, listen, yeah. And she doesn't, I'm not even going to ask you. But it's interesting you said that, because you can do that. I was telling you that I was looking at these ugly videos from 10, 12 years ago. And I was specifically looking for the ones where my kids happened to pass through and I would include them whether they liked it or not. And believe it or not, I did that when I was in radio, but it was a lot easier because they couldn't see me, but I'd be on the air and they got so comfortable with my job. They'd climb into my lap, and I had a pretty cool boss. And if they said something, it was like, that's not cool,
Yeah.
So I think that's really good. I think, can I share my fault? Where I failed was actually probably in my marriage, where I didn't think he would believe in me. I hope this frees someone up, my vulnerability. He didn't believe in me, so I was living a lie. I had the kids trained, Sarah, when David was a very successful construction, landscaping, everything he touched turned to gold. And when he came in, I had them trained to say, Daddy's home, Daddy's home. And I'd slam the computer and, try to be like the happy wife, happy life type thing.
Yep.
And, and another confession, it's only been since I brought Dave online on with my business a couple of years ago. He handles we do mentoring, and he helps the upper level mentoring. Has there been peace where I don't have to, I hate living a lie. That's just, so if you're going to be authentic, you can't live a lie with anyone in your home. Is that correct? So
absolutely.
And Dave even, still talks about it, but now it's like, we're so on the same page. I would be afraid if I had an interview, and so I just say, hey, Dave, I got an interview Monday at 1:30, I've got a consult call Wednesday at 2, and it's like, cool. So, but he's retired in a way, and we're more involved in, I don't know if we're more involved, but anyway, I think that's a gold. What you just shared, it was gold for someone. And I think it's going to free someone up. Live or recorded, you listen on the podcast. And I want to say, if you were listening on the podcast, she was so authentic when she let her dog out. Sarah, we literally got a view of her kitchen. She masterfully picked up her computer. I don't know how she did that, and walked out the door. I have to share that.
Well, I made sure you didn't see all the dirty dishes.
That's cool. I would have been fine. I'm blessed right now. My husband is the chef in our house, so I'm really blessed. Let me ask you this question. This is for my own sake, too. I love gleaning from your vineyard. Oh, wow. I just forgot exactly how to say this. So I'll go on to another question. See, I'm real, guys. It's sometimes the brain kind of goes.
Yep.
If someone wanted really, this is kind of a basic question, but if you're trying to teach someone how to write well, what are like the 3 things they really have to be aware of to be able to write well to a certain audience?
I think that you need to, number 1, figure out who that audience is. Because if you just feel like, I'm going to get online and I'm going to share my story, share my life, if you don't know who you're writing to, you're never going to be able to actually engage with them. I write differently for the different clients that I have and for my audience. Some of them have overlap, but some of them I write for, he's a 75-year-old pastor. And so my tone is much different when I write as him versus, for my own audience. So I think number 1, you have to figure out who you're writing to. That ideal client, your dream client or customer, student, whatever it is, you have to know who they are and why they would want to hear from you. Otherwise, you're kind of dead in the water. Number 2, I would say you have to get over yourself. I know that's not a very practical tip, and I'll give my practical tip in a second. But if you are too worried about, like we just said, if you're too worried about what it's going to look like, what it's going to sound like, even to the point of perfectionism, which holds lots of us, hand raised, back from really stepping into who we are, it's going to sound dead. It's not going to have your personality. Even if you're trying to bring that into your writing, if you're so worried about getting it correctly, it's going to fall flat. And so I think just removing that doubt and knowing you are your best writer, you are the person that can bring your message the best is you. No, nobody's going to read it and say, well, I could have said her message better, because it's not their message. It's yours. It's your message. It's your life, your experience. So get out of your own way and realize that it's okay if it's not perfect. Number 3, I would tell you to stop thinking so hard. And separately from number 2, forget everything you learned in English class. All those things that you learn, like my kids right now are learning how to classify sentences and the complete predicate and the hanging participle and all of that stuff. And my oldest always makes fun of me because as I'm writing, he like looks over my shoulder and he's like, that's not grammatically correct. I would get marked down for that. I'm like, yeah, of course you'd get marked down for that. Yeah. And there's a time and a place to learn how to do that, because you need to write coherently so people can understand you. But the biggest thing is to learn how to write like you talk. And most of us don't talk like an encyclopedia. That's
so good.
These things, if you even listen to the way that I'm speaking now, I try to infuse them with, I call them the starts and stops. The things that we say that we don't even think that we're saying. And like that to put that in there humanizes everything you're going to write.
If you go ... does that kind of put that pause in there, or how do you do that?
Yeah. I literally write the words. Wait a second.
Okay. That's a good tip. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Okay.
Anything that would come out of your mouth can be on a paper.
You know what freed me up in that area is one coach said, you should really write at 5th grade level. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's awesome. and to me, that makes you authentic. Like, okay, I'm going to be authentic and share this. And let me ask you this. This is kind of what I was going to ask. So I'm not perfect. I totally can't remember what I was going to ask you.
That's all right.
I'm real out there. But let's talk about this. I know you have a heart to serve, because I have a heart to serve. And I just connected with you on Instagram. Someone's just getting started and they're really freaking out. They go live and no one shows up, or they don't have very many followers. Give them some gold that it's a matter of connecting with your right audience, with the people that God's called. Let's put this in, with the people that God has called you to talk to your flock. How has that just freed you up to continue to step up to the plate, regardless of the numbers? I go live on Instagram at times. I need to go more. And I'm like, okay, no one's here. That's fine. 2 people are here. Well, hi, But how have you walked free of that to really say, hey, I know who I have to serve. These are who people I'm going to serve.
Yeah. One of my business coaches told me that when you show up live and there's nobody there, to count it as a blessing and to see, like, if my audience is so small right now that nobody's showing up, then this is my time. This is like the golden time that I can make all the mistakes and still be safe enough that, if I have 10,000 people watching me and I can't remember what I'm supposed to say and I totally blank out, there's bigger pressure there. There shouldn't be, but we're going to put more pressure on ourselves when there's more people watching. So you are able to step into your own when you are really talking to yourself. And I have been there, like literally talking to myself, and think, like, you just play on like, oh yeah, thanks friends, see you later. Okay, I'm talking to myself again.
Or you could have questions and then you make the questions.
Yeah.
Someone wants to know. Let me answer that question.
Yes.
And we're just
yeah. And so I think realizing that this is a special time for you in your business and that you have more freedom, I think. Also, I've been told that by the same business coach that when you go live, you're not going live for the live. You're going live for the replay. your content is going to be hopefully around long enough. And so if you're sitting there, and especially people that, you see them get on and they're like, okay, I'll just wait a few minutes. Before everybody gets, I'm going to let everybody hop on, la, la, la. And they're just sitting there for minutes on end.
Oh, no.
No. And especially the people that are there live, they don't feel like they are valued. But then the people that are there for the replay are skip, 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 skip. Like that's not, you want to get their attention as soon as you're on there.
That's good. That's right.
And it took me a while to get to this place, but I would rather have, my audience is not that large on Instagram. I don't have, when I switched from my personal page over to a business page, your numbers, obviously, like I started at 0. And so I would rather have a tiny audience, but the people that are there engaged and loving what you do, and that you're serving those people, than this huge, with the check mark beside your name, but when you post, it's still crickets. And so if you can learn how to cultivate that when your audience is really small and connect with those people, the rest of the audience, when they come back and see that, they're going to see those connections, and they're going to see that even on your old posts, when you had, 20 people that liked your post and, 10 of them are your relatives, they're going to see that you still connected with those people, and it's going to cultivate that culture within your page.
Yes. And consistency is everything.
Yeah.
Stay consistent. Don't come on 1 week and then you're a ghost for 3 weeks. And I think you do this so well because I follow you. Just stay authentic. You're having a bad hair day, still go on. Having a bad hair day, I can't go on. You got to kind of put your ego. And the bottom line is what we always said. I think we maybe said this off camera. It's not about you. It's about the people that God's called you to serve. Yeah. So that's what I was going to really, that was the question I was going to ask. How did God just burn that in your heart, that it's not about you? It's really about the people that God's called you to serve. How did he do that? Was it a story behind it, or just as you grew in Christ, you just realized?
For me, if I'm focusing on myself and how good I can make me look or sound, or, only posting so that I know that people are going to share that and, let's go viral and all that kind of stuff, which there is strategy. Don't hear me say that there's not, because there for sure, you do want to create content that people are going to want to consume or want to share. But if that's the only reason you're posting, then you're posting for the wrong reason. And when I'm in that mindset, I am an anxious mess. I am constantly feeling down on myself. I'm checking the numbers. I'm seeing how many likes. I'm always in the analytics way more than I need to be, because my focus is on myself. Because I take it personally, if there's no likes, if there's no shares, then it means I did something wrong or I'm not good enough. And so for me, it was just almost out of necessity that if I'm focusing on myself and getting that content that I think is going to make me look good, I'm a mess. And so I didn't like feeling like that. I have the propensity towards anxiety anyway, so I didn't need an extra layer to make it even worse. So I had to flip that. Otherwise, I would be just a nightmare to live with and would constantly be in my head. So I had to make that switch to see that when I'm focusing on myself, I'm not doing anyone good. Now, I'm not even doing myself any good. And so I have to be able to flip that switch and make it, what can I share with people that can help them, can push their business forward, and realizing, almost going back into that identity, that what I do, what I say brings value, and not just thinking like, well, who am I? What am I going to do that, I'm sure they've heard it all. Well, they haven't heard it all from me. And I have a completely different perspective than even the best copywriting coach out there. I have a different perspective, a different life, different skill set, and I'm going to be able to connect to different people than the best coaches.
That's so good. That's really good. Wow. And I think bottom line is, you have something of value. One thing that's helped me with that, Sarah, I'd love to I have a friend, Roma Waterman. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's from Australia. We use some of the same systems, and she's like 23,000 in her membership group. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, sometimes I check the numbers because I just want to serve. And there is I don't have a poverty mindset. There's a monthly payment installed. But there are times when I'm like, just like, oh, there's just not enough in there. But my husband helped me that. So now I go in there, and let's say we do twice a month live, and then I have classes that they go through and Facebook stuff. But I'll go in there and I'll look up. Okay, I do Zoom for them. I look up and I'm like, oh, one person's showing. But when I say boom, record, I'm acting like there's 23,000 in there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to interact with them. I don't really interact with them, pretend people. But that's, to me, that's giving what God's put in me. Why would I take that away? And the great thing about recordings is other people can come back and watch them.
Yeah.
So I think you do that well, and I'm encourage you to continue to do that, because
thank you.
God has put influence in you. God has put excellence in you. God has put humor. Man, you got a great sense of humor. It's a gift.
Thank you.
So I just want to encourage you to keep being you. That's the final question. I think we have the same coach, and when she candidly says, "You do you, boo," it frees me up. And it's like the phrase, someone needs to hear this right now, Sarah. So I want you to talk on this. You are enough. Share with someone listening that they need to be reminded that they are enough.
I always want to add to it. You are enough, but you are enough because you are made to be enough. It's not because of anything I've done.
That's good. Okay.
Or because of anything great about me. It's because I was made to be enough. Just by me being me and me being who I was created to be, that's how I'm enough. And that's what I often want to add on the other side and say, well, I am enough when I blah, 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 fill in the blank. But that's not how it works, because often that's taking away from who I am. When I want to add anything onto Jesus, that's not going to work when I'm adding on that. And so when I can remember, and when you can remember that you are enough, because that's it. You don't have to do anything else except be you, except show up the way that God called you to do, because that's how it works. That's how he created you. And so when we can remind our kids of this in our marriage, that all we have to do is be us, and God fills in the gaps. Like that's what grace is him covering us and filling in the gaps. So when I don't feel like what I have is enough, because it's not, it's because Christ through me is enough. And that's when everything else is covered. It might not look the best. It might not sound the best. It might not be on the top of the charts, but right now that's not where God called me to be. And that's okay.
So good. How can people get in touch with you? I think you have a class coming up where they can sign up. Give us some of your creds, and please follow her on Instagram. You will really be blessed. Okay.
Oh, thank you. So you can find me on Instagram at Sarah Voris Writes. And I always say V like Victor, O-R-I-S, because nobody ever knows what my name is. At Sarah Voris Writes. My website is just my name, sarahvoris.com. I do have a copywriting course coming out in the next few weeks. And to be the first people to hear when it drops and to get the best price on it, you want to be on our waiting list. So if you go to sarahvoris.com/waitlist, you can join on the wait list and learn all about it.
Tell them about your podcast too. You have a great podcast.
Oh yeah, that's also true. True that I have a podcast. So it's called the Pretty Profesh Podcast, and it's all about learning how to find your voice as a writer and all of that, and in your business and all that kind of stuff. But it's the reason it's called the Pretty Profesh Podcast is because a friend of mine, we always joke that we are not super professionals. We are not super profesh. We're just pretty profesh. Like we don't have to have it all together, but we're going to bring real and we're going to bring authenticity. And so the Pretty Profesh Podcast, and you can find it where you find all your podcasts. And
it's a good listen. So I hope you'll go and listen to that.
Thank you.
This has been awesome. Just as only God could have told me. Wasn't sure how this was going to go, because I just met Sarah on Instagram, but that's a good question. Be bold. God will, I really believe the Holy Spirit will let you know, because you kind of it's like Lisa Bevere said this in her Godmother's book. She said Godmother's spirit connects with Godmothers, or Godmother's spirits connect with Goddaughters. And that's the only thing I can say is that the way I connected with Sarah. So you've added so much value. And I just really want to say thank you. So thank you so much, those of you joining us on Facebook. I see your comments. Kimberly, I'm glad that this really blessed you. This will be on episode number, I think it's 145 on the Kingdom Mentor podcast. So I hope you go over there, any podcast, the Kingdom Mentor podcast. And there's a free guide to find your voice at redeemyourvoice.com. I hope you check that out. So God bless you. Thank you so much. And you know what? I really do love you. And I'll talk to you in the next one.